things, but they don't necessarily relate to each other at
Yeah,
first, right? Like in your funnel, you just quickly described what your funnel is. People become aware, then they get into Discord, and then they become super fans essentially.
yeah, yeah.
But just because you're taking those two actions doesn't necessarily mean they relate directly to each other, or at least in the initial stage of things. So I love how you boiled it down. You're like, hey, we did all these things, and I bet for your team, it felt like you were busy, which means you feel like you should get some type of results. But then you went back and we were like, oh, we're not really getting the results of that we're looking for to meet our goal. So then what do we need? And you're like, we need new players. How do you get new players? And then boom, you're like, let's do events. Let's do these other things. So influencers and press and all that stuff. So one of the questions that I had prepared relating to that too is, out of all these other channels that you were using, initiatives and things like that for your marketing efforts, which ones produced the most awareness in turn, well, and ultimately producing the most results for you?
Oh, definitely. Well, I've talked about it, but it was definitely the Steam Game Festival. I mean, it was, in terms of number of wishlists, it was the biggest wishlist spike that we got in the entire development time. It was absolutely crazy, because out of a sudden we had so many players who actually played our game, and we had so the wish list go up, and we had some players actually giving us some feedback and gathering up in the community. So yeah, the Steam Game Festival actually helped us meet the two goals. We had a growing, we had new players in our community, and we had lot of new wish lists, and players now became aware of the game. And I know that then within our community, players actually talked to their friends about the game. They were like, hey, I found this game on Steam, you should try the demo. The game will release soon on Steam, you should wishlist it and all. And it was like one of the most perfect time that we got in the development, because it was like an accomplishment for us, because yeah, what people don't really know is that at first is that the Steam Game Festival was announced, like it was the very first session, and we didn't know about it before. And
Mm.
when it was announced and we could participate, it was a big change in terms of development for us, because we had to make an actual demo that had a start and an end, that had to show the game as it would be when it would be released. And it was like something big in the development process, but it really paid off in the end, because after the Steam Game Festival, we realized how people were actually fans of the game, and how we could actually do something good with the game.
See, I like that you called that out by saying, like, in under these circumstances too, it wasn't necessarily known of like what were the requirements, right, for this festival.
Yeah,
And then you found out, and then we're like, okay, as a decision, we really got to push forward to make this happen, because
yeah,
and I know sometimes for because everybody has different situations, different lives, and everything else, that but you guys basically saw that opportunity and really pushed through it, it sounds like, without probably going into detail about how much extra energy and effort that took.
yeah, absolutely. And that's something very interesting in terms of indie development, because well, most indie teams don't really have don't have all the marketing knowledge, which is normal. Even I don't know everything in terms of indie marketing, because there are so many opportunities, and it's hard to know, is it worth it. Like, is it worth it to actually spend 2 months in my development to make a demo, while I could spend those 2 months doing the actual game? And it's hard to answer that question, because all through the year, throughout the year, there are always new events, new opportunities, new physical event, new digital event, and you can technically spend your time working on your marketing, and at some point you need to work on the actual game. And so it's like it's very hard for indies in particular to say, okay, for this event I'm going to go all out, I'm going to give everything I am for this event because I know this is worth it. And for the Steam Game Festival, well, we kind of knew it would be worth it because it's Steam. I mean, when you take part in a physical event like, I don't know, even Gamescom,
Yep.
or GDC or PAX, it's great. But the thing is that it's really expensive for small indie teams, and the return on investment is kind of hard to make because you don't really see a big wishlist spike after those events, or if you see one, it's not as big as you hoped it would be. But since it's on Steam, well, people who take part people who had to check out the demo were very likely to wishlist the game, so we knew that it would be worth it. But at the same time, we thought, and it was true, that there would be a lot of games. There was a lot of games in the first Steam Festival, and so we were like, okay, we know there are a lot of games. So how do we make our game stand out?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that people actually click on the game and actually wishlist it? Well, we need to make the best demo that we can. We need to make some streams. We need to make some interview. We need to make some Discord events, which is a lot of work. I mean, we asked. Well, we are very lucky. We are lucky enough to have 2 people in marketing in our team, and we also had our publisher who did amazing support. But for smaller indie teams, it's hard to put all your efforts, because all this time that we'll spend on this festival is time that you won't spend on the development of your game. So yeah.
Yeah, I love a few of those points that you mentioned. One in particular was, in essence, online events or the Steam event versus like other ones that you listed, and calling out to the return on investment. So in this case, in this circumstance, it was creating a demo for this event, right? So
Yeah.
whatever that cost in terms of resources, if you were to compare it, and for some people, especially indie devs or solo devs, you're looking at you could look at it where one is, I just need capital or money and then time to go to these events in person. That can also be very tiring.
Yeah.
Or whatever the cost may be a little bit more predictable if it just comes down to making the demo. There might be some timeline and things like that, but it's like if you were to weigh out all those costs on return on investment, and I'm not just speaking this from a financial or budgetary one, but simply like with the time, effort, energy, money, whatever else that goes into making the demo versus going to some of these events, where could you potentially get more return on investment? So I love that you break it down that way, because I don't think a lot of people, and I can understand why, think in terms of that. Like, how much more like mental, physical, financial energy would it take to do this event opposed to this event? And when you start putting those things together, it's still work no matter which one you go to, but one's going to probably give you a better return.
Yeah, and also there's the fact that thanks to digital event, I mean, it was unfortunately because of the situation with COVID, but digital events are very less tiring for a team, because when you go to an actual physical event, well, you need to prepare the demo, you need to prepare a lot of things.
Yeah.
You need to prepare your assets, you need to make some posters, prepare your booth, and a lot of work. And if you don't do it yourself, you need to pay someone else to do it.
Yep.
Then you need to pay for the plane or the train or the gas. Then you need to sleep. You need an actual place to sleep.
Yep.
You need to go. You can't really do it alone, because it's very exhausting. I mean, I had to attend a few years ago. I attended the public booth in Gamescom for 5 or 6 days, and it's it killed us literally, because you never really sleep. So you need to have several people in your team to help you. Well, but if you have several people in your team, then that means that there's actual money, because you need to pay the people in your team. That means that a part of their salary will not go in the games development, but in the marketing, in the booth attendance. So yeah, it's very expensive to go to a physical event. And also, when someone sees a game on a physical event, how do they react? Do they actually launch some money, are actually throwing some money at you, or are they just saying, "Oh, this is a cool game, maybe I'll get it"? Well, maybe they will forget about it when they come home. So yeah, the physical events, I mean, to me, they are great. They are great ways to meet your players. But in terms of returns of investment, the something like Steam Game Festival or any digital event, it was much better.
Yeah, no, and I could see how that could work for definitely for you guys, because again, like the climate's changing a little bit. It's not to say it can't work or be beneficial from all these other events, but again, it really comes down to what your objectives and goals, right?
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
One thing I want to get into a little bit more, and you already started talking about a little bit, was, basically differentiating yourself or standing out. Because I'm sure some people now are asking, okay, great, I have some ideas. I've participated in a Steam event before, but I didn't get too much traction or whatever. And there obviously could be a variety of reasons for that. And it sounds like from your plan that you put together, there's a lot of marketing initiatives that were happening in conjunction with or the upcoming of the event. But one thing I think is really key to what you mentioned is really doing a lot to stand out. Now, there's any number of ways you can stand out, right? Like you had those initiatives reaching out to influencers, and obviously you had some extra help that maybe other people might not have. But one thing I want to call out to, and you do mention this in a section of your article too that I think is really good, is that content for you guys as a whole was really important. Let me elaborate a little bit. It was everything from the playtime of the game, even though I know you said it was limited, but the play, what it was composed of, the actual design, and even down to the media you shared. It seemed like it played a huge role to Last Spell's success. So I was just curious if you could give some examples on how this ended up being the case from you, how that the content was a really key part in your strategy.
Yeah, the content. If you mean the content in terms of the game, it's very interesting, because when you make a demo for your game, you want your players to ask for more, but on the other hand, you want them to actually have some fun. And for, I don't know, maybe for platformers, for example, it's very easy, because you say, okay, they will have access to 2 or 3 levels, and that's all. But for a game like us, for a tactical RPG, making a demo is very, very hard, because you never know how much content you want to give your players. And what we did was to not give them the actual the meta shop, the upgrades and all, because back then it was not implemented yet. But we also gave them a lot of weapons, a lot of freedom in the way that they could play the game. And so some players actually played the demo for 20 hours, and it really paid off, because players could see the big potential of the game. Thanks to the smaller demo, and it also paid off after the release, because what we saw was that we had a lot of players who played like 70, 80, or even